Let's take a look at some charts on Bitcoin for the latest Brave New Coin article. So the exaggeration about hash rate death spiral has clearly been exaggerated, as exemplified by the hash rate over the past year. So it's actually really hard to snapshot hash rate at any given time, and it's all a giant estimate. The real snapshot is difficulty on the network. So difficulty will adjust for BTC plus or minus 25%. That's the maximum cap, depending on hash rate at the time of the snapshot for difficulty. So we can see that week over week, since May 2019, since February 2019, hash rate has risen, difficulty has risen. We had a little drop in difficulty from November to December, but that has increased again. Now we may again see drops in difficulty because of this Wuhan virus, because of how hash rate is globally distributed, because of how ASIC production is globally distributed. So it's possible we see a drop in ASICs released this year simply because China's kind of shut down productivity-wise, which could also affect the network. You know, this recent drop in hash rate week over week in February may be Wuhan related. You know, it's really hard to tell in the near term what any of this is. Correlation isn't causation, blah, blah, blah. You know, if we see difficulty decreasing over the next 4 weeks, then it becomes a little more convincing. As it stands right now, miners are making a really nice profit. I think break-even price is around 3,000 to 5,000, and you know, Bitcoin is 2x that. So I think they're doing okay. Looking at transactions and average transaction values. Again, for any chain, if you're looking at on-chain stuff, what do I want to see? I want to see week over week increase in transactions. I want to see average transaction values continuing to increase with market cap or increase over time, especially if it isn't a DApp-driven chain, so BTC isn't. There aren't a lot of small transactions to drive the average down. This is all just pure, unadulterated BTC on BTC action as far as transactions go. You know, Lightning transactions aren't included in here, so those won't bring the average down. This is just who's moving money from point A to point B. Since January, transactions per day, per week, I think this is averaged over 7 days. So those have just skyrocketed completely. One thing that's kind of buried in the article was this Veriblock stuff. It essentially uses extra block size in BTC and verifies other chains. So in 2019, it kind of took over the transactions. It was a high percentage of total transactions. Currently, it's around 1%. So to see transactions where they're at without the external stuff like Veriblock influencing those numbers is a good thing. It isn't like artificially inflated or anything like that. If we look at NVT, which is the line here, the fill is active addresses. So what you want to see is NVT low historically or decreasing. It's an inverse metric of economic utility. If NVT is rising like it is, that suggests that the market cap is currently overvalued based on economic utility of the chain. Now, if we look at active addresses, again, similar to transactions since January, they've increased, they've reached 6-month highs essentially. So this is bullish, this is good. NVT is a little scary. It's continued to make higher lows and higher highs. So it's just increasing. And one thing that NVT doesn't take into account, again, Lightning transactions, anything off-chain, doesn't really account for inflation. So these values might need to be adjusted over time. And it's hard to take the NVT value or metric at face value. Just, you know, looking at it without knowing inflation or on-chain, off-chain stuff. Off-chain transactions will decrease NVT because it's more economic utility. Looking at MVRV, another one of these like oscillators for on-chain economics, basically. We can see that anything below 1 historically has been an excellent buy period. Anything above 3.5 has been sell and go to cash period. And we're currently kind of in the middle of that. So this is macro wise, this has plenty of room for up as well as down. You know, it's not one way or the other. As far as being overbought or oversold, there's nothing really here that I can get from this metric that says definitively one way or the other where we're headed. But it's good to look at every once in a while to see, are we super you know, historically above 3.5? Are we historically below 1? Those are the important areas that I'm watching. This is a really cool chart called the Hodel Wave. Basically, it checks the age of all the coins in existence. And you can see over time, more and more coins are aging into this 5-year bracket. This red is like moved within the past day, past week. Historically, you can see local highs, bubble highs have correlated with these bands just increasing rapidly and then diving. So currently, again, not showing a macro top because this band isn't reaching 15% plus historically is what it's taken to basically print a reversal. The way I think about this is if price rises really fast to a point where it's exponential, enough people are going to say, okay, this is enough for me. I'm going to take profit here. So they move the coins to an exchange and they sell. That's probably what we're seeing here. You're also seeing lots of people buy, lots of new buyers, right? So anytime there's an explosion in activity way higher than, you know, this is since 2018, it hasn't been this high. So if we see something in 2020 where a bunch of new tokens are moving around, there should be a corresponding local high in price, macro top, if you will. Looking at Google Trends, I was talking about Tezos in the last video, and you know, Tezos' Google Trends are like at all-time high or pushing all-time highs. BTC's Google Trends have certainly been on the up, but nothing to write home to ma about. Okay, they're definitely still flat. Nothing too exciting here since 2017. So historically, you know, there aren't a lot of people Googling Bitcoin or what is Bitcoin, where to buy Bitcoin, that sort of thing. Moving to TA, looking at the usual suspects here, long shorts on Bitfinex, BPVR, visible, volume profile of the visible range. I always screw that one up. Oscillator RSI, volume, yearly pivots, and the 50 and the 200 EMA, the green and the red here. So if I'm bullish, what do I want to see? I don't want to see longs at all-time high. Why? Because that says we're primed for a long squeeze. It just says there's a lot of gas in the tank. If we go down, it's going to start tumbling down. More and more people are going to sell. All those longs that are long are going to be underwater, and they're going to capitulate. And then price is going to go lower, and then they're going to capitulate more, and price is going to go lower. So it's not bullish when I see this, definitely. The other thing that's not bullish is this rising wedge. I'll show it on another chart that immediately sticks out to me. However, macro trend remains bullish. You have your bullish 5200 golden cross that happened maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago at this point. We're above any massive volume resistance, and the yearly pivot sits around 13K. So if you're just trading yearly pivots, you're longing 8, you're selling 13, you don't care about any of the noise in the middle. If you're playing EMAs, you're longing the golden cross, you're selling the death cross. Sorry, death cross. You're not playing any of the noise in the middle. Is it perfect? No. Is it stupid simple to trade? Yeah, it is. Another thing you're looking at is RSI blown out? Similar to MVRV being above 3.5. You know, is RSI above 95, which historically hasn't happened ever. You know, maybe a couple times on the daily. That just says momentum is very, very bullish right now. Another thing you're looking at, you know, similar to these periods when RSI was 80 plus. Another thing you're looking for with RSI is, have we made higher highs in price on lower momentum, on less RSI? You know, has RSI made a lower high, which arguably it did before it pulled back here. It's a tiny one, but it was there. Looking at the macro trend since 2015, love it or hate it, BTC has preferred to remain in this white and purple zone. Yes, it can go above. Yes, it can go below. And it's bounced on this red zone these past 2 macro lows in 2018, early 2019. And in the 2020 rollover, we inverted head and shouldered down there and have since just rocketed up. 15K is the median point for this. So that's where it's going to want to head. This is going to continue to increase. This is a log chart. Log chart linearizes exponential gains. So that's why it looks like it does. Looking at the cloud, it was bullish. You know, the Kumo breakout, it's pretty clear. So hopefully, you know, if you like TA or you watch TA, you know that below the cloud is bearish, above the cloud is bullish. It's been bullish since late January, pretty clearly. Another thing important to know about the cloud is this red line, this Kijun, is the mean reversion point. So price is always going to want to come back to that. Currently it's around 8.4, 8.5. Just as the bullish reversion was possible here, the bearish reversion is possible here. So that remains the target. The other support resist line is always the Tenkin, and you can see we had a Tenkin bounce here. So we're currently around 9.6, I think, on a Tenkin, whatever it is. This chart's a few days old at this point. But this 8.4, 8.5 zone remains unchanged. That's where I'm a strong buyer, personally, because that's what the cloud is telling me. And lastly, just looking at this rising wedge, again from a couple days ago, it's broken down since then. If we just take high to local low, 50% of that is 8.5. It's no surprise that cloud is also drawing us a level here. The cloud will continually draw 50% of a range so long as we stay in that range. So if we make this massive range, stay in that range, the 50% level will be there. So that's where cloud wants us to go. It would make sense for the falling rising wedge as far as a pullback target where we want to go. Now this won't happen overnight, but it will take some time and is a high probability zone.